My name is Steve Kehoe. I'm a volunteer event coordinator for Dr. Klaper and Movie Medicine Forward. Dr. Klaper started this about a year and a half, and it was something that really spoke to me. You see, my wife had stage 4 breast cancer. She was diagnosed about a little over 8 years ago. And we really felt desperate, as you might imagine, and we really weren't given much hope by standard oncologists. They were pretty much giving her about 2 years to live. So it was a desperate time, as you might imagine, but we had this aha moment that was at a gathering very similar to this. It was a plant-based doctor who really opened our eyes to something we could do to help battle the cancer. And one of those guys was actually a couple, happens to be in the first row right here, Dr. John McDougall. And he's meant so much to us. He doesn't know it, but he really did. At the beginning stages, we read all his books and watched everything online, and he kind of opened us up to other doctors and eventually Dr. Klaper. And I don't think my wife would be alive if it wasn't for doctors like this. So I just thank them so much for the work they did. They're always going against the grain, as we know. But when I found out about Dr. Klaper doing this, about a year and a half ago, he started doing Movie Medicine Forward. And this is his retirement. But in his retirement, we set up 9 talks over the last 7 days. This is the 9th talk, so hopefully he's still standing and won't keel over here. But he's got so much energy and passion for this. It's really invigorated me to want to do more. And I love being a part of this, so thank you for everything you're doing. But the end result of my wife following this advice was great. It's been 8.5 years now, and she's totally clear of cancer. Has been in remission from like 6 months on. Thank you. And the bonus sides, the side effects, as they say, she lost 100 pounds. She's kept it off all these years. We're both very, very happy and healthy, again, due to this whole food plant-based diet. So the reason I really got involved was my oncologist, or her oncologist, that I had to deal with all the time when she was going through it. He was an older gentleman, and he was very resistant to everything we were trying to do. And it was so frustrating. The chemo, everything else was very hard to get through, but the mental aspect of dealing with a very resistant doctor was so frustrating, and we didn't go to him for support anymore. And that was hard, and we almost gave up at the beginning. And I think many patients do. When their doctor is telling them what you're doing, rolling their eyes, telling them you're really not doing any good, I think most people would give up. And fortunately, we kept researching and finding out more information. We didn't give up. And she got through all the treatments better and better the healthier we ate during those first 4 to 6 months. So this works. We all know it works if you've tried this. So anyways, he started Movie Medicine Forward. It's great. His goal is to reach every major medical school in the United States. And I think it's an honorable goal. And I want to help in any way possible. So we're having a raffle. After he talks, it's usually about an hour. We'll take about a 10-minute break. If you haven't gotten any raffle tickets, there'll be one last chance. And then we'll go ahead and bring the raffle prizes up here. And there's some great prizes. There's a Vitamix, Instant Pot. So check it out. And then after the raffle, he's going to do a Q&A. So as long as people have questions, they don't kick us out of here. So to introduce Dr. Klaper, I'd like to introduce Reverend Lisa Davis, and she will introduce us.
Welcome. We're so happy to have you here this afternoon as we gather and get to listen to such wisdom. I believe that each of us realizes that, we're here to evolve. We're here to find a larger picture, a greater understanding. And part of that is how we eat. And so if we're looking for peace on our planet, how different is it when we find peace in our bodies and a balance and an ability to heal ourselves? I too found healing through food 30 years ago, and I'm so grateful to do what I love, and I believe every one of us came here with a purpose and a passion, and we are here to do that. And Dr. Klaper, I'm so grateful that your gifts, and I was looking at, practicing as a medical doctor for 40 years, and then saying there's something more. What a path, what a presence. 8 years in the lifestyle medicine clinic, and then moving on into this whole nonprofit of how can I take this message to every medical school in the United States. That is so powerful. And so I am grateful that you all called and just said, would you mind if we came over? And I realize all of us are gathered, and where we are gathered, there's something larger that happens, and it's in our hearts and our minds and our beings. And so welcome. We're so happy to have you with us, and we are ready for your wisdom.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa, for that lovely introduction and for the use of your wonderful hall here. Thanks, Steve. We've had a whirlwind tour. We've been to 7 medical schools in the last 7 days. We were at University of California, San Diego, University of Southern California, USC, Loma Linda University, University of Oregon last night in Eugene. We were at Western University of Osteopathic Medicine in Lebanon. We were at their Western University campus down in Pomona. And I really want to thank my friend and colleague, Dr. McDougall, who has been very generous in sponsoring a lot of my talks here. And that's really very, very appreciated. And Mary, thank you so much. Nothing would happen without Mary. So I want to make this a practical lesson for you. A lot of stuff to cover, everything from weight loss to paleo diets, and I want to give you as much information that you can use as possible. But I need to start off with an apology, and that is apologizing to all of you on behalf of my medical profession and my colleagues. God bless them, they're all doing the best they can, but unbeknownst to them, the majority of them are suffering from a malady that's keeping them from giving you the medical care you deserve. And most of my medical colleagues are suffering from a condition that I call Pachydermic gnosis. Now, you may not be familiar with this word. I'm not surprised because I just made it up last week. But there's a lot of information in this word, Pachydermic gnosis. If we look at the roots here, means no, and gnosis is Greek for knowing, and so therefore Pachydermic gnosis is not recognizing there's an elephant right in front of you. And that's the case with especially my specialist colleagues, because they're all working earnestly in the clinic to cure their patients' diseases. And the cardiologist sees the clogged arteries, and the internist sees the high blood pressure, and the endocrinologist sees the type 2 diabetes, and the physiatrist sees the sore joints, and the rheumatologist sees the lupus, and the neurologist sees the dementia, and the dermatologist sees the psoriasis, and the gastroenterologist sees the Crohn's disease and the colitis, the general surgeon sees the colon cancer. And they're all trying to figure this out, but when they check in the textbooks and on the internet, they run into 2 words that stop all further thought: etiology unknown. We don't know the cause of these diseases. And it's true on the ultimate fine molecular, genetic, enzymatic level. We don't understand every last little mechanism. But they're finding that they're looking at common threads there. All their diseases, whatever their pet interest is, they all see that there's something to do with inflammation. There's something to do with oxidative stress from all the cooked foods. There's lots of free radicals buzzing around. And yet they don't know what to do with these threads. They're still stuck in etiology unknown land. And if I could, I would appear in their cubicles in a puff of smoke and yell loudly in their ear, "It's the food your patients are eating is where all this is coming from." And in fact, I have a plaque in my office that when my patients are sitting in front of me, overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed, and say, "Doc, how did I get this way?" I point to the plaque that says, "It's the food. It's been the food all along." And they go through all these Weight Watchers and fad diets, and it's the food that they are eating. And without recognizing this, it leaves the doctors frustrated because they just raise the patient's insulin dosage and metformin dosage and their statin dosage, come back in a few months and watch their patients all getting fatter and sicker, and nobody's getting better, and the doctor's getting more frustrated. And the real loser, of course, is the patient. Because the truth is, if the doctor would get them on a diet made of whole plant foods, these diseases go away. And when I speak to young medical students, I tell them, listen, you're going to be learning in medical school all these weird and wonderful diseases. You're going to learn how to diagnose and treat everything from leprosy to smallpox. But when you open the door of the waiting room of your clinic or in the emergency department or the outpatient surgery department, you're not going to be seeing patients with leprosy and smallpox, thank God. What you're going to be seeing is a large group of people with a small group of diseases having something to do usually with their weight. Their arteries are not functioning. They've got high blood pressure and lots of fat running through them. They often have type 2 diabetes. They have angina and having many strokes, and a host of inflammatory diseases affecting every organ, their lungs, their intestines, their skin, their joints. And it's a dismal message that we give to patients that there's nothing we can do for you. I'm just going to manage your disease. We'll manage your high blood pressure. We'll manage your diabetes. I don't know about you, I tell the students, but I didn't go into medicine to manage chronic disease. I wanted to cure people. And every one of these diseases is reversible, every single one of them. Those of us, Dr. McDougall knows well, who practice lifestyle medicine have a stable full of patients who used to be obese, who used to have high blood pressure, who used to have diabetes, who used to have lupus. These diseases go away with a proper diet and lifestyle. You got to stop smoking, got to get enough rest. But this is a powerful concept, disease reversal. I practiced medicine for 45 years before anybody put these two words in the same sentence for me. These are reversible diseases. And I tell the students, you need to know this. Otherwise, you just stumble into this etiology unknown and you just facilitate their diseases. And the patient needs to know this, that you mean I don't have to have high blood pressure forever? No, you don't. Because we tell them you're going to be diabetic forever. You're going to take these pills the rest of your life. You need to tell them this is a reversible disease. You can make these diseases go away with a proper diet and lifestyle. And they need to know that healing is possible. It empowers the patient, empowers the doctor. So we're talking about a whole food, plant-based diet here. It's nothing that exotic. If you want to eat breakfast, have some oatmeal with fruit on it. Lunches and dinners are colorful salads, big plates, big hearty vegetable soups, big plates of steamed green and yellow vegetables, lovely legume dishes, lentils and beans and stews. And you can do it any cuisine you want, Italian style, Chinese, East Indian, Mexican. Have fun with the seasonings. But the power of this food to reverse diseases is just not appreciated by doctors. We are not taught the effect of the patient's daily diet upon their body. When I get up to the microphone, I tell the students, I'm going to give you the lecture I wish somebody had given me 50 years ago. I wish they had taught me what the meal after meal after meal does in the patient's body. So I'm going to share that information with you. If you eat a healthy meal based on whole plant foods, we're talking about a big colorful salad, there's a hearty vegetable bean stew here, there's quinoa and zucchini boats, and a big plate of steamed green and yellow vegetables. You eat a meal like this, and an hour later, after it starts getting out in your bloodstream, I were to sneak up on you with a needle and a syringe in my hand, and when you weren't looking, I dropped 5 cc's of blood into a red top tube, and let it clot and spin it down in a centrifuge and look at it. Here's what you see. The clot goes to the bottom, the liquid part of the blood, the serum rises to the top, and this is what your blood should look like, crystal clear. You can read newsprint through normal serum. This is how healthy blood should look like after a healthy meal. But you have a standard Western meal. You have bacon and eggs for breakfast. You have a cheeseburger, fries, and a shake for lunch. You have a pizza or steak or fried chicken for dinner. You eat a meal like this, and all the saturated fat in the beef, the butter fat in the cheese, the egg yolk and the mayonnaise, the vegetable oil in the fries, the butter fat in the ice cream, all this fat oozes out into your blood. And for the next 5, count them, 5 hours, your blood looks like this. This creamy appearance here, this is fat in the blood. The medical name, this is lipemia, it means fat in the blood. And postprandial means after eating. After eating, your blood turns fatty. Not everybody shows it this optically densely, but everybody has a wave of fat that goes through your bloodstream after you eat a fatty meal. How can you not? Where else is it going to go? And I was serious about that 5-hour number. Here's a classic study. They gave someone a fatty meal at hour 0, and they drew blood once an hour for 6 hours. And they took those 6 blood tubes, and they put them one after another into an instrument that measures how fatty the blood is getting. And you can see the blood getting fattier and fattier and fattier and fattier. It takes the liver about 5 hours to begin to clear the fat out of the blood. And during these 5 hours, evil things are happening in the body. The fats are inflaming the inside of the artery walls, opening the door for atherosclerotic plaque formation. It flows through your fat stores, increasing obesity. It clogs up insulin receptors, making people more diabetic. And contrary to what you hear, that butter is back, saturated fats are pro-inflammatory. They fan inflammatory reactions. Well, think about what this means in the context of how most Americans run their eating day. They start their morning off with something fatty, an Egg McMuffin or bacon and eggs, etc. And for the next 5 hours, their blood is running thick with fat all morning. Their arteries are getting injured, they're getting more obese, they're getting more inflamed. It takes the liver till about noontime to begin to clear the breakfast fat out of the blood. When time for lunch, and another wave of fat goes through the bloodstream, ripping up the artery linings and making you obese, making you more diabetic, making you more inflamed. It takes to almost 6 o'clock in the evening for the liver to begin to clear the lunchtime fat out of your blood, when time to visit the colonel and send another wave of fat through the bloodstream. The blood stays fatty all evening, ripping up your arteries, making you more obese and inflamed and diabetic. It takes the liver till about 10 o'clock at night to begin to clear the dinner time fat out of the blood, when on the way back to the bedroom, you polish off that half pint of Haagen-Dazs in the freezer, and another wave of fat goes to the bloodstream. And the reality is that most Americans are keeping their blood fatty all day. Stuff never clears out of the bloodstream. You keep your blood fatty 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. You can't be shocked when some abnormal changes start showing up in the body, and I will show you some of what those changes are. Now, I've been focusing on the fat here, but I'm not telling you, well, just eat a low-fat diet. The fat's just a marker for what is in your bloodstream after you eat a meal. The reality is there is an evil brew of substances flowing through your bloodstream and through every cell in your body from this meal. The American diet is a high salt diet, and here I was just in Israel, and the falafels and hummus here. Cheese is a high salt food. Certainly the French fries are salty, the chips are salty. All this salt works its way into the artery, stiffens the artery walls. The kidneys retain water to dilute out the salt, and this raises your blood pressure, increasing risk for heart attacks and heart failure and strokes. But we're now learning that high salt diets turn on some nasty immune cells in the body that turn on our own tissues and open the door for autoimmune diseases like lupus and ankylosing spondylitis. High salt diets are not friendly to the body. Then we come to sugar. Now, we all have a sweet tooth, and I honor that. And I'm not talking about a half a teaspoon of sugar in your tea. That's the proper use of a sweetener like this as a flavoring. That's okay. I'm talking about eating sugar as a food. And when you're scoffing down the chocolate chip cookies and the chocolate cake and the candy bars and the donuts and the milkshakes and the Coke, you're eating sugar as a food. What's the problem with that? Well, the sugar flows to your body and starts sticking to proteins all over your body. It glycosylates your proteins in your blood, in your connective tissue. And this sets off a nasty reaction that every baker knows. It's called the Maillard reaction. It's what makes bread crust brown, the sugars plus protein. The sugars, the pastry flour, the proteins, the gluten. They put it in the oven, and this sticky protein gets oxidized and mats down into this bastardized, unusable protein, which is fine on the surface of a French baguette. But you don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the lens of your eye. It's a great way to open the door to cataracts. You don't want to run the Maillard reaction in the elastin fibers of your skin. It's a great way to wind up with epidermis that looks like an old suitcase. And you don't want to run the Maillard reaction on the inside lining of your arteries in your brain. That's a good way to give yourself Alzheimer's. When we analyze the brains of Alzheimer's patients, they are loaded with these sugary oxidized proteins called advanced glycation end products. Don't worry about the name, but remember the acronym, because eating sugar as a food ages you. And that's the issue. You don't want to eat sugar as a food. And to give you a little visual reminder why you don't want to do that, here is a young woman about to do that act. She is about to eat sugar as a food, and she does. And the sugar flows through her tissues, sticks on proteins all over her body. Her own body heat is like the baker's oven that oxidizes the protein. So she eats the sugar, and 6 months later, eating sugar as a food ages you. It's not what it was meant for. Now, we're here talking about plant-based diets as the antidote to this. And the very act of cooking animal muscle, of grilling that steak, frying that chicken, creates a host of damaging molecules. I'm going to quickly run the list here. When I'm lecturing the medical students, we take every one of these apart and we talk about what they do in the body. That's not germane to this lecture. Trust me, these are all nasty molecules. The very act of cooking animal muscle oxidizes cholesterol, and it's the oxidized cholesterol that gets in the walls of the artery and sets off the plaque formation. The very act of cooking animal muscle oxidizes nucleic acids and proteins that create reactive aldehydes. These are mutagenic. They damage your genes. They turn on cancer genes. They damage genes throughout the body. New 5-GC is a sialic acid only found in animals that sets off inflammatory reactions throughout the body, and our paleo friends and our keto friends are giving themselves a shot of New 5-GC 3 times a day. Endotoxin comes from the bacteria from the slaughterhouse. These bacteria die, and their cell walls release endotoxin that sets off inflammatory reactions, sets off blood clotting, makes your gut leaky. That sets you on the path to autoimmune diseases. TMAO is a molecule that is produced by bacteria in your gut that are brought forth by a meat-based diet. If you're eating meat and eggs, you're eating lots of carnitine and choline. That summons up microbes that create this molecule that drives cholesterol into the artery wall and ages you prematurely. Cooking animal muscle creates carcinogenic, cancer-causing molecules that rub on your colon wall and set off colon cancers. The heme iron that makes red meat red gets into the bloodstream, into the body in way too high amounts, and increases the risk of gastric cancers and strokes. And the animals in the feedlot are fed bushels of grains that are sprayed with herbicides, pesticides, antibiotics, growth promoters. And as they're in the feedlot, the cows, the pigs, the chicken, the sheep, they're eating these grains, and these toxic molecules are concentrating in the animal's flesh. And every bite of that chicken breast, every burger that you're eating is loaded with these the meat-eating folks are flushing these molecules through their tissues meal after meal, day after day. The folks who are promoting these paleo diets and keto diets are telling their patients, oh, it's a good thing to run these molecules through your body week after week, month after month, year after year. No wonder we get shocked. Then suddenly the arteries get inflamed, suddenly and develop plaques. Suddenly the joints get all red and swollen. Gee, how did that happen? We're mystified when colon cancers spring out of the gut. Gee, bad genetics. As scientists, how can we say this with a straight face? How do we ignore the effect of food upon our patients' bodies? And yet, when we get people to adopt a whole food, plant-based diet, why do I say that? We've got, if you believe in evolution at all, we have come up through the simian line, the ape line on this planet, and we've got basically the same digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have, and they're up in the trees tonight eating leaves and fruit. That's what they're designed to, and we've got basically the same digestive system. We've got fingers on our hands, not claws, and we've got starch-digesting enzymes in our saliva. We're plant-eating creatures, and we revert to that natural diet that we ought to be living on. The changes are just remarkable. Within days of taking a patient like this, or like Emily here with her diabetes and her angina, you get them on a whole food plant-based diet, and within days the obesity starts to melt away, and the arteries open up, and the high blood pressure comes down, and the joints stop hurting, and the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing so much, and the migraine headaches start going away, and the bowels start working again, and the psoriasis starts to clear up, and they turn into normal, healthy people right in front of your eyes. This was Emily, went on a whole food plant-based diet. 11 months later, this Emily turned into that Emily. I tell the young students, what more can you ask from your medical career than to help a patient transform themselves into lean, healthy people who don't need pills and potions and procedures? Isn't this why you became a physician? And yet we withhold this information. Unknowingly, they suffer from Pachydermic, and they don't recognize what they're looking at. But meanwhile, the patient gets shortchanged from this vital information. To the medical students, we go into detail how this diet actually works, its remarkable healing effects. I don't want to spend our time on this right now, but inflammatory arthritis gets better, rheumatoid arthritis, asthma frequently gets much better, diabetes starts to reverse, skin problems clear up. It's really remarkable, the changes. But it's also not remarkable. Eating a diet based on meats and dairy and oils and sugars, it's like putting diesel fuel in your gasoline-burning engine. And of course, the gas line plugs up and the spark plugs foul. But you put in high-test gasoline and runs great. And that's basically what we're seeing here. The body reverts to its normal state of health. It wants to be healthy if we stop interfering with it. For the scientists in the room here, let me just quickly touch on a couple mechanisms if you're really interested in why it works and how it works. Busy slide here, don't get thrown by it. Here's all those nasty molecules that I mentioned here. When you go on a plant-based diet, these disappear. And instead, with the plant foods, every meal you're flushing this river of not only water, these are high water content foods, but these lovely phytonutrients from the plants. They are antioxidants. They quench free radicals. They stabilize tissues. They promote tissue repair. They give the chemical message, shh, calm down, everything's okay. And wonderful changes start happening. The blood that was running thick with all the saturated fats starts flowing more easily, and so oxygen delivery to the tissues increases. The inflammatory molecules in the tissues are removed, and the anti-inflammatory omega-3s suppress inflammation. You take away the fried meats and cooked meats, and so the oxidative stress goes down. The gut bacteria change. The good Firmicutes bacteria blossom, and the bad bad bacteroides start to subside. That often makes people feel better emotionally because these microbes put out neurotransmitters. They put out serotonin and dopamine and make you feel better. Hormone levels change. Skin oils get less viscous, and so we see acne often clear up, psoriasis. Kidney function gets better. High protein diets are toxic to the kidneys. These guys eating these high meat diets and scoffing down these protein powders are writing themselves a ticket to the dialysis machine. When all those amino acids slam into the kidney filters, it stresses them. It makes the kidneys shift into a gear of hyperfiltration that injures the kidneys. Well, on a plant-based diet, the proteins are much gentler, and so that subsides. The asthmatic folks do better. Their lung secretions get better. All the way around, a whole food plant-based diet is a disease-reversing diet, and yet nobody's telling the medical students this, so that's why I'm going to school, and I'm telling them that. They need to know this, and it's just a wonderful thing to see. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on the specific diseases, but those of you who are not familiar, moving past the diabetes and the arthritis, I want to talk about the biggest killer in America today, and that's atherosclerotic plaques clogging the arteries. Every 30 seconds in this country, someone grabs their chest and falls over with a heart attack, and every other one of them dies. And the cardiologist said, oh, it's a relentlessly progressive disease. Once you get those plaques, nothing slows it down. The only thing is it's a matter when we put in the stent, when we do that bypass. That's right, doctor. If you don't talk to them about what they're eating, that's exactly what you're going to see. And because cardiologists generally don't talk to them about what they're eating, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But you get these folks on a whole food plant-based diet, and this disease reverses. And I tell the students, listen, atherosclerotic plaques are not just globs of grease that build up on the artery walls because your LDL is too high. These are inflammatory lesions. These arteries are being injured. Meal after meal of fried animal protein and hot vegetable oils from the French fries and high fructose corn syrup and phosphoric acid from the cola drinks, this chemical assault that we inflict on our arteries injures the inner lining here, allows the oxidized cholesterol to enter and set off the plaque formation. And it's the oxidized cholesterol that leads to the formation of the plaques that sets off the clot that eventually kills the patient. Relentlessly progressive? Nonsense. This is a reversible disease. And Dr. Caldwell-Esselstyn wrote up his study in the late 90s, almost 200 patients with significant coronary artery disease, went on a whole food plant-based diet. In the next 4 years, in these 200 folks, at least 40 of them would have had heart attacks and strokes and death. And essentially none of them had any of these problems. 93% of them had their angina, that crushing chest pain, go away. Of the 21 who dropped out, over half of them did experience a heart attack or stroke. This is profound. If you have artery disease or you know anyone who does, get Dr. Esselstyn's book, follow his advice to the letter, and you can melt these plaques away. Here's how it works. Here's why. Dr. Esselstyn insists that his patients steam up a big batch of dark leafy greens every morning, kale, chard, broccoli, and 4 or 5 times a day, sprinkle some balsamic vinegar on it to liberate the nitric oxide that dilates the blood vessels, and eat some. And just keep a steady stream of these dark leafy greens in the body. Why? Because this is the wall of the artery here. And keeping the phytonutrients from the greens, like resveratrol and others, as the weeks go by, these antioxidants seep into the artery walls. They find the free radical-filled foam cells that are what makes up the plaque there, and they neutralize the free radicals. And these evil foam cells that entered into the wall of the artery, they leave. They outmigrate. And as a result, the plaques get smaller and smaller and smaller. And that battered endothelial lining reestablishes itself, not by magic, but because the bone marrow is constantly putting out showers of stem cells that reupholster the artery and turn it back into a newer artery, a reborn artery. And if you haven't seen this X-ray, let me show you the most dramatic X-ray in all of medicine that every cardiologist should have to study, and it's this one. Many of you are already familiar with it. This is an artery from the heart, the left anterior descending artery, from a 46-year-old surgeon, a colleague of Dr. Esselstyn. And this is an artery in the heart. This is the dye column. They squirted some dye in the artery. The whole artery should be about this wide going down, but this rat-eaten part here, these are plaques that are encroaching into the blood flow channel. And he had such severe angina, he couldn't walk 10 yards without taking a nitroglycerin tablet. He went on a whole food, plant-based diet, eating those greens for 22 months. And after 22 months, this artery turned into this artery. Same man, same artery, okay? It is a reversible disease. These plaques will melt away. Every cardiologist who's seen this should have picked up the phone and called Dr. Esselstyn and said, how did you do this? I want to share this with my patients. What did Dr. Esselstyn hear? Crickets. Why, the doctor didn't want to hear this. And in fact, here is a cardiology department at a major hospital pondering whether they should do anything in face of this improvement, and they decided to order corned beef sandwiches instead. It makes you feel sorry for the elephant after a while, and right there in the room, no one even acknowledges me. We treat the patient's diet like in the Harry Potter movies, Voldemort, the name that must not be spoken, ooh, don't ask about the patient's diet. Oh, we're Americans, we can eat whatever we want. Yeah, but your arteries got something to say about that. Your prostate gland's got something to say about that. Breast tissue's got something to say about that. You violate natural laws. You take a simian body and feed it the diet of a mountain lion, and you are transgressing some powerful laws. You are going to kindle some processes that will really turn on you. And so my poor patients are not the doctors don't share with them this important information, and that elephant of the doctor's ignorance stands in the way. How do you make that elephant of ignorance disappear? I tell the doctors, look at what your patients are eating and get them on a whole food plant-based diet, and the elephant disappears. And yet this information is almost never shared with our patients. Why not? We're not taught about nutrition. It's not even in the medical curriculum at all. Nutrition is not respected as a science. It's a sissy science. It's not a real medicine. Surgeons say, I'm up in the OR doing real medicine. Send him to a dietitian and let her give him a diet. Don't bother me. I'm in the OR doing real medicine. And they don't even ask about it in the national board exams. It can't be very important. And for that piece of arrogance, that young surgeon or that young cardiologist is going to spend the rest of their career at 4 a.m. up in the operating room or down in the cath lab, dealing with the infections and the infarctions and the amputations from what their patients are eating. And finally, why isn't nutrition discussed with our patients? Because the doctors are eating it themselves. And they're eating their burgers and their pizzas and their steaks and their lobsters, and they're not going to tell their patients not to eat it. And you wind up with the sad spectacle of an obese doctor with a pocket full of beta blockers and statins and lisinopril. How sad. What kind of an example is that when you open the door and trying to get your patients healthy? Pachydermic gnosis. It's really rampant, and it really deprives the patient of life-saving information. It's unethical to withhold this information. In the principle of medical ethics, we are told that physicians shall continue to study, apply, and advance scientific knowledge and make relevant information available to our patients. We are mandated to share this information. Withholding this information, by definition, is unethical, and yet we do. And we do so, my colleagues, at our peril. I think it's just a matter of time before an angry widow walks into the office of a cardiologist or a cardiothoracic surgeon and says, my husband died on that operating table last month during a 4-vessel artery bypass, and nobody told us he could have melted these plaques away from the inside with a plant-based diet. Why didn't somebody tell us this? Why was this information withheld from us? When did you people know this? How long has this been in the medical literature? 25 years. And she should file a wrongful death suit. And she should win it because this is a wrongful death. All of these are wrongful deaths if the disease could be reversed by a plant-based diet. So I want to make this a practical session for you. Let me quickly cover some basics of how to lose weight. Let's talk about the carb controversy. There is no controversy, the confusion. Talk about paleo diets, how to order in a restaurant, and then the bigger picture that's really involved here. In the space of my 47-year medical career, I have seen a tsunami of obesity sweep through our population. It's just been stunning. And I'm not here to fat shame anybody. I'm here to talk the physiology of obesity. And instead of getting concerned about this, and there's reason to be concerned, we just accepted it. We've normalized it. Yeah, we're Americans. We're fat now. It's the way it is. And you got a problem with that, then that's your problem, Doc. I'm okay. I know I'm carrying too much fat, but it's okay. It's not okay if you want to be healthy. Let me show you what's inside that big belly. I'm going to show you a plastic model of an obese abdomen that's split lengthwise here and tell you what's the reality of the fat. There's two kinds of fats making that belly big. Under the skin, the subcutaneous fat is metabolically active. It secretes estrogen. It is the largest estrogen-secreting tissue in the body. And too much estrogen gives women breast lumps and gives them fibroids and sets off uterine cancers, gives guys prostate cancers. You don't want 35 pounds of estrogen-secreting tissue plastered on your abdomen. It's a recipe for disaster. The fat inside the abdomen is a different cat altogether, and it produces molecules called inflammatory cytokines. This fans inflammation throughout the body. These are just some of the diseases that are made worse by these inflammatory cytokines. Having a big abdomen is like having an alien being in your body, and it's not your friend. It is putting out molecules that are hurting you. It's a state of inflammation. And it can and if you're diabetic, it makes things worse. This is a muscle cell that burns glucose. And insulin needs to move glucose into the muscle cells to burn it. But if you've been eating all this fat, the fat gets in the muscle cells, clogs up the insulin receptors, and those cytokines from the big abdomen interfere with the insulin receptors from the outside. No wonder obese people go diabetic. And yet all of us, Dr. McDougall knows well, who get people on a whole food plant-based diet and get them trimmed down and burn off that belly fat. You have patients like Jim on 30 units of insulin, and this Jim turns into this Jim, and now he's running marathons, and that's not diabetic. Diabetes goes away. It's a disease of fat toxicity. So let's talk about how to lose weight. The beauty of this diet, if you're keeping your belly full of whole plant foods, is high fiber foods and with high water content. And that's the secret, keeping your belly full of whole plant foods. It's mostly fiber and water. It doesn't stick to you. You pee out the water, you poop out the fiber, and how many apples can you eat? You know, how much salad can you eat? It's the whole plant foods that fill you up and yet don't increase obesity. So it's not about losing weight, it's about eating healthy, about these high fiber foods. This is the key. And you can eat all you want as long as it's in this form. If you go back for a fourth bowl of vegetable soup, who cares? It's vegetable soup. It's fiber and water that doesn't stick to you, and a leaner body follows automatically. So let's talk about this carbohydrate confusion. Plants make sugars from the air and the rain and the sunlight. They take carbon dioxide from the air and water from the rain and put it together and form these rings. Here's one called glucose. And as the ring is closed there using the sun's energy is stored like in a coiled spring. And when we eat the sugars in the form of starches or fruits, we break apart the ring, the energy comes out, and it's a clean burning fuel. We get energy and carbon dioxide that we breathe off and water that we excrete. Carbohydrates are clean burning fuels. We are carbohydrate burning organisms. The mitochondria in our cells burn sugars, not fats. And this idea, avoid those carbs, they do not know wherein they speak. Now, the plants want to store these sugars. The potato plant needs some stored sugar to get through the winter. The rice plant wants to wrap some sugar around the seeds so there's energy to sprout in the spring. So it takes these sugars and links them together in long chains of sugars, and that's called starch. And when we eat the starch, our enzymes in our saliva and our pancreas and our intestine break the bonds here and free up the sugars, and we harvest the energy. Now, the sugar can be stored in our muscles and in our liver in the form called glycogen, and we only have about a 24 or 36-hour supply of it. And we're always burning, well, what about fats? What about sugars? We are always burning both, a fuel mixture of both sugars and fats. The sugar is mainly powering our muscles as we move around, and that's why we need it. We draw down on the sugars in our muscles, and it's similar to in a hybrid car, the electric battery. That's like the sugar stored in our muscles, and we use that sugar up. We draw down on it as we move around, and then we eat some potatoes or rice and replete those stores like the storage battery gets restored when we either plug it in or we break the car. So the sugar is the immediate fuel, but we're also always burning fats in the background. That's what keeps up our body temperature. When we're moving around during the day, most of our body heat is coming off of the sugars. We're burning about 80% carbohydrates, 20% fat. At nighttime, we use much less muscular energy, and so while we're sleeping, we're burning more fats. We burn about a penny's weight of fat every hour. Why is that important? This is telling you that high carbohydrate foods are not to be feared. They are not evil in their whole plant form. Nature uses carbohydrates to make plants. These are all high carbohydrate foods, the beans and the broccoli and the watermelon. But they're not going to hurt you. They're, again, mostly fiber and water. The fiber is carbohydrates, and it doesn't stick to you. These carbohydrates are evil, and loading up on these really damages the Maillard reaction, etc. So if I can share information with you that means something, don't get seduced by avoiding those carbs, because in doing so, they're taking a big broad brush and they are smearing the word carb over the good carbohydrates and the refined processed carbohydrates. They're all avoiding the carbs. No, you don't want to avoid these carbs. This is what human beings run on. Yes, avoid these carbs. They will hurt you. They will not turn into fat. Carbohydrates essentially cannot turn into fat. The body is not going to break apart a glucose ring, grab the fragments, and then start stringing them together in long chains and turn them into fats. Too much enzymatic work. Carbohydrates, healthy sugars will not turn into fats. What happens if you eat a bunch of starch in the evening, you have some potatoes or rice in the evening, you will replete your glycogen stores. You'll fill up your muscles and liver with that stored glycogen. And once they're once your glycogen stores in your muscles and your liver are filled up again, you'll burn the rest off as heat. Your body temperature will go up 1/4 degree. You'll stick your foot out from under the covers at night, and you'll radiate the heat off to the atmosphere. It will not turn into fat. So don't avoid carbs. They just not going to be turning into fat. Now, I've got some vegan patients who are frustrated because Doc, I've been vegan for 10 years and I'm still carrying this weight around. Well, why? I'm not eating any animals. What's going on? Let me give you the key to creating a truly lean body, and it has to do with a concept called oxidative priority. What does that mean? It means it's easier to burn sugars, to blow apart a glucose ring, than to metabolize these long-chain fats. That means, okay, so it's easier to burn sugars than fats. That's the oxidative priority. So that means if you eat sugars and fats at the same time, or within 4 to 6 hours of each other, you will burn the sugar and you're going to store the fat for later. Okay? That's the issue. It's that fat-sugar combo that sticks to you. Look at all the fat-sugar combinations in the Western diet. The fats in the meat and the cheese and the oils and the dairy, the sugars in the bun and the drinks, the fats in the meats and the sugars and the starches here. You want to be a fat vegan, pour oil on your pasta. You're going to burn the sugar in the pasta and store the fat in the oil. Ice cream is fat and sugar. That's what the stuff is. You couldn't ask for a better weight gain food. So this is the issue. Steak and potatoes, you burn the sugar in the potatoes, store the fat in the beef. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you're going to burn the sugar in the bread and the jelly. You're going to store the fat in the oils here. And pizza is another great weight gain food. You're going to burn the sugar in the crust. You're going to store the fat in the cheese and the sausage. No wonder we are packing on the fat. And my overweight vegan is eating the almond butter and jelly sandwich. She's putting earth balanced margarine on her baked potatoes. She's pouring oil on her pasta. It's this fat-sugar combo that is sticking to you and frustrating the folks who want to create a lean body. Don't put oil on your pasta, okay, all right? The secret is keeping your belly full of these high water content foods. So if you're trying to lose weight, and this is only, hear this is only for people trying to lose weight. If you're already lean, do not pay any attention to this. It doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. But this is for the folks who are stuck and stopped eating the meat and dairy. You want to avoid eating the fats and the sugars at the same time. So what do I do with baked potatoes? Put salsa on it. Spray a little tamari sauce on it, but don't put a bunch of margarine or artificial cheese sauce on it. Well, what do I do about avocados? What do I do about walnuts? Enjoy them, but eat them. Put them on your salad. Put them on your greens. You can make a tahini dressing. Put it on your broccoli there. Okay. Now, when you do eat sugars, it takes about 4 hours for the insulin to go up and down and clear the sugar out of your blood. So if you have have a baked potato or rice at noontime, let 4 hours go by, let your body clear it out, and have your fatty foods in the evening there. Allow that 4-hour gap there. You want to avoid stuff like this because they are full of fat, sugar combos, and salt. They are not food. They are edible food-like substances in brightly colored packages and boxes. What do? You may walk past them in the supermarket, and they may call your name as you walk by. They are very seductive. What you do is you pull out your 3-word magic wand, point it at the display, and say, "That's not food. Not your food," and walk down the soap aisle so you don't have to deal with it. You want to eat food as grown, like it was growing in the garden. Oh, those are peas. That's a tomato. That's a cucumber. You want whole foods. You like potatoes? Great. Eat potatoes, not potato chips. You like corn on the cob? Great. Eat corn, not corn chips. It's the processed food that causes the problems. And that gets us around to olive oil. Ooh, Mediterranean diet, healthy food, healthy fat. Oils are liquid fat in a bottle. And it's not a health food. It's liquid fat in the bottle. It's the white sugar of the fat world. I know I'm talking quickly here. But it's got plenty of calories in it. And if you're trying to lose weight, these liquid fats are going to stick to you. And they're not friendly to your arteries. They injure the artery walls and make them stiff. Studies clearly showing that. Pouring olive oil on your salad does not magically make it healthier. Ooh, Mediterranean diet. Stop kidding yourself. This woman's going to hurt herself Even though she poured olive oil on her salad, it's not a healthy Mediterranean diet. So what do you use oils for? You stir fry your veggies in them and you make salad dressings with them. Well, you can stir fry your vegetables in anything that's wet, vegetable broth, a couple of tablespoons of last night, vegetable soup. You can buy broth, wine, anything. The alcohol evaporates off. Anything that's wet, water will work. Salad dressings are easy to make without oil. Just take some vegetables from the salad, some carrots and celery and broccoli, throw them in a blender with some water, a couple of walnuts, a piece of an orange, hit the button, salad dressing, and pour it on your salad. You don't need oil to make them. And all these lovely balsamic vinegars, there's lovely ways to dress your salad. So if you are already eating plant-based and you are stuck with weight, you're eating three things that are hurting you here. You're eating oils or fats. You're eating flour products that are fat and sugar. That's the sugar is the flour, and there's some fat holding it together. There's some shortening or lard or egg yolks. So baked goods are fat and sugar. That's why you want to stay out of the bakery. I go into the bakeries and I open the door and I go, delicious. And then I turn around and I walk out, And bread's really not your friend. We've pretty much stopped eating bread in our house. It makes me feel like I got a bowling ball in my stomach. We eat, instead of bread, we make lettuce boats, and they work very well instead of the heavy breads. Or you're eating hidden dairy products. Cow's milk is baby calf growth fluid. It's meant to turn a 65-pound calf into a 700-pound cow. And there's milk in the bread, there's milk in the baked goods, and that's what's sticking to you. Does timing matter? Yes, it does. You don't want to eat late at night. Why not? Because if you eat some starches at 6 in the evening, as I mentioned, it takes about 4 hours to burn it off. And by 10 o'clock at night, you're switching into that fat-burning gear, and yay, you burn more fat while you're sleeping. Wonderful. But if at 10 o'clock at night you have something sugary, that takes another 4 hours to burn that off. So you've blown 4 good hours of fat burning when you could have been getting leaner there. So for that reason, be done by 6 or 7 in the evening. Be done with eating if you can. Have a cup of herb tea if you like, but don't be eating sugary stuff in the evening. Should you eat during the day? Should be a grazer? No, especially if it's sugary, sweet foods. It keeps your insulin levels up all day, and you wind up packing fat into your cells all day. So you don't want to do that. And finally, is breakfast the most important meal of the day? No, it's not. This whole idea of my most important meal of the day is an advertising gimmick, and here's the man who made it up. His name was Edward Bernays. He was an advertising executive hired by a bacon company in Chicago to promote the sale of bacon. And he started the first advertising campaign, took out ads in the newspapers. Doctors say you should eat a healthy breakfast. Eat bacon and eggs for breakfast. And that's where it came from. And the memes that we see in this political season, same phenomenon. People, don't you hear we're supposed to eat bacon and eggs for breakfast? There's no scientific truth behind this at all. You do not burn breakfast for energy. At the most, you'll replete your glycogen stores, but you certainly can go out for a walk in the morning and burn the glycogen that came from the potatoes you ate a couple of days ago. Now, if you're hungry, eat, by all means. But I ask most people, when you first get up in the morning, are you famished? Are you starving? Most people say, Doc, I'm not even that hungry in the morning. That's because you've been burning this nighttime fat mixture, this fat-rich mixture, and just because the sun came up, your body doesn't know that. It's still burning that fat. And that's why it's okay if you're trying to lose weight and you're not hungry in the morning, keep that nighttime fat burning going all morning. Start your eating day at noon or until you really get hungry. But if you're trying to lose weight and you have a meal like this first thing in the morning when you're not even hungry, then you wind up like her. And so So a valid strategy is just drink water till you get hungry. It's an absolutely valid thing to do if you're trying to lose weight. If you're hungry, by all means, have some oatmeal, have some fruit, have a cantaloupe. That's fine if you're really hungry. But if you're not, that's your body telling you you don't have to shove a bunch of carbohydrates in your mouth first thing in the morning. Now, a lot of folks, well, I don't eat red meat anymore, but I still eat chicken, and it's cage-free. Let's get real about chickens and turkeys. These are not your grandmother's chickens and turkeys. These animals have been raised, have been genetically modified to put on as much fat as possible. That what makes that chicken finger-licking good is all the fat in the muscle cells, and full of pesticides and herbicides. And these birds get so fat they can't even stand up. And if you think this is lean flesh, just remember the last time you saw somebody make chicken soup and what floats up to the top. These are fatty, fatty birds. Poultry is the fattest of all the flesh foods. It's fatter than lean beef. So stop kidding yourself. Welcome to camp kidding yourself. Stop kidding yourself. I've got vegans who say, Doc, my cholesterol's still 220. Now, initially, cholesterols can go up because as people burn down their fat stores, cholesterol comes into the bloodstream and it can be elevated. It's not hurting you. It's on its way to the liver to be excreted. But sometimes people's livers will make a little extra cholesterol. That's okay. It's not an evil molecule. And I went into this exclusively. I put a video on my website called Beyond Cholesterol. And it goes, the issue isn't how high is your cholesterol. The question is how healthy are your arteries. And if you're not hurting them with your daily meals, a slightly elevated cholesterol is not going to hurt you. I know I'm covering a lot of stuff here, but I wanted to drop as many pearls as I can here. Finally, I want to talk to you about the paleo diet. This guy says, I tried to be a vegan once, didn't work for me. I eat some meat and I feel better. I'm a carnivore, man. Give me give me that meat. The paleo folks say avoid those carbs; they make you fat. Now, people adopt these paleo diets of meat and vegetables, and many of them initially do better. They lose weight, their lipids get better, their diabetes gets better, and they say, see, paleo diet, that's the way to eat. Well, the paleo folks do some things I agree with. They say no caveman ever milked a dairy cow. They're down on dairy products. No caveman ever poured olive oil on their salads, and no caveman ever ground wheat into flour. Well, you stop the dairy and the oil and the flour products, you're going to trim down. And the weight loss will make your lipids better, make your diabetes better. But I tell the medical students, do not be seduced by these early beneficial changes. I told you what a flesh-based diet really does. Let's get flesh eating into some perspective, you folks who are doing the keto thing and the paleo thing. Most people in the West eat animal flesh 3 times a day. There's a piece of animal muscle in the middle of every plate. I just want to point out that not even lions eat flesh 3 times a day. Huh? Tigers in the rainforest, official carnivores, do not eat flesh 3 times a day. They eat it once a week if they can get it. No advanced primate eats flesh at all, let alone feeding its young animal flesh 3 times a day. You give this guy a steak, he'll step over it and go for the bananas. We are not carnivorous apes, no matter what the paleo folks try and tell us. Our saliva still has starch-digesting enzymes. We've got these big, long intestines. But the paleo folks point to our canine teeth, and they say, aha, what about these? We got canine teeth. It says we should be eating meat. To which I say, go into the bathroom, stand in front of the mirror, open your mouth, and what are you going to see? You're going to see your canine teeth are shorter than your central incisors. And you've got these flat, grinding molar teeth and a rotary joint in your jaw that allows a chewing motion. If you think that this is a canine teeth that says you should eat flesh, you want to see some canine teeth that are meant for tearing flesh? If your canines look like this, go to the nearest butcher shop, or get a big porterhouse, walk outside, rip off the paper, have at it, you know? Or take a nice big fresh salmon or bass and put it into a blender and make a nice salmon smoothie and drink that down. Appetizing? Stop kidding ourselves. So what are these, what is this canine teeth for? What is this mouth for? What it's for is to eat the food that really got the Paleolithic folks through the eons that we've been on this planet. The reality is, when they examine the fossilized feces of the Paleo folks and see the massive amount of fiber they were eating, the truth is that most of the calories brought into the Paleolithic camps were gathered by the women, who spent all day foraging for starchy roots and tubers and gathering berries and edible grasses. We were starchivores back then. This mouth works just great for this kind of food, and this is what the Paleo folks really ate. It's not like every caveman had a mastodon in the freezer and spent all day eating mammoth meat. We were starchivores then. Dr. McDougall brought Nathaniel Dominy to one of his advanced study weekends and made it very clear starchivores are starch eaters. Who's telling us to eat flesh 3 times a day? You know who makes up the dietary guidelines in this country? The Department of Agriculture makes up the guidelines. What do you think they're going to tell you to eat? Meat and dairy with every meal. The problems with the paleo diet, I won't go into them, but it's a constant acid load. It's hard on the bones. These folks are going to give themselves gout. They're going to give themselves kidney failure. I mentioned the carnitine spawns the plaque-promoting bacteria. And if someone asks me, Doc, I want to cause a colon cancer. How do I do that? Well, pack a colon full of meat 3 times a day. Let that rub on your colon wall for 20 years and see what that sets off. And my fear for my paleo patients and friends and family members is these folks are setting themselves up for an epidemic of colon cancer, heart attacks, strokes, autoimmune diseases from the leaky gut, diabetes from all the fat, Crohn's disease and colitis from the microbes that they are spawning in their gut, and dementia from what they're doing to their arteries. We are meant to run on plants. The biggest, strongest animals on the planet, elephants and buffaloes and giraffes, run on plants. All the magnificent muscle in this animal was made by the plants that he ate. People say, well, he's a bull. How about humans? If you need a little reassurance that a plant-based diet is adequate for wonderful athletic performance, fire up your browser and type in 3 words, vegan bodybuilders, and see who shows up on your screen here. Do any of these lovely people look protein deficient to you? I will point out Jim Morris at age 61. Here's Jim Morris at age 71. Last year I was 71. I look just like this. It's automatic. But if you need more reassurance, get on Netflix and see a film called Game Changers. It will change your whole appearance, the whole idea that vegetarians are scrawny, weak, inadequate folks. You'll see these magnificent athletes doing these spectacular feats on plant-based foods. So, yet people say, listen, what about this guy? He tried to be a vegan, didn't work, eats some meat, and feels better. I had meat cravings for years when I first became vegan. What's behind that? Here's what I think is happening. Where does it all begin? My belief is, here's the physiology. Like so much else, it begins in the earliest months of our lives, at age 6 months of age. The baby is still nursing at the breast. And with all the love in the parents' hearts, your mother didn't know, my mother didn't know. They just wanted the best for us and to give us the most nutrition-rich foods. With all the love in their heart at age 6 months of age, that jar of baby lamb and baby veal and baby beef and baby chicken is opened. And from that point on, 3 times a day, animal flesh is slathered on that infant's intestinal tract. All through infancy, by age 2 and 3, they're eating their Happy Meals and they're off to a flesh-based diet. throughout their adolescence, their puberty, their teen years, their 20s, their 30s. You eat animal flesh 3 times a day for 30 years. What's going to happen? Your muscle cells that make carnitine, creatine, myoglobin, they're perfectly able to synthesize that. But if those molecules are coming in preformed in the food 3 times a day, what do you think that baby's genes are going to do? They're going to downregulate. You don't have to make your own. It's coming in preformed. It's constantly in the bloodstream. And that's going to give you a physical dependency on these preformed muscle-based nutrients. Then at age 30, you see Forks Over Knives, or you read John Robbins' book and go to Dr. McDougall's lecture. Ooh, plant-based, wonderful. But all those preformed muscle nutrients, gone. Now you got to make your own, right now. Most folks can gear up their enzymes to create this, but a significant amount of people, I think, it may take them 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to gear up to run totally on plants. And during that time, they may draw down on their nutrients, their muscle-based nutrients, and they don't feel so good. And then they eat some meat, and all that carnitine and creatine, myoglobin flushes through their cells, and whoa, I feel great. I'm vegan, schmegan, man, I'm a carnivore. But what have we seen? This is not normal human physiology. This is an acquired dependency produced by feeding a human infant animal flesh 3 times a day since infancy. We've created this dependency, and we call that normal physiology. It's not. I've delivered 400 babies, and 30 of them were to vegan parents. And I watched them grow up in these lovely, strong, healthy vegan people. They don't have meat cravings. Their mouths don't water when they walk past a barbecue. They are different physiologic creatures. They do not have this meat dependency. And some folks, it may take a while to gear up their enzymes, change their liver physiology, change their intestinal microbes. And some folks may require a longer time, 6 months, a year, 2 years. It's okay. And these folks may have to gradually phase in. They may need to eat a little bit of animal flesh once a week and increase the interval between it, and may take them 6 months, a year. Fine with me. I'd much rather people eat flesh once a week than 3 times a day. It makes all the difference in the world. We've got to change from an animal-based diet that we're currently eating to a plant-based diet. If you want a little help with that, go to my website, drklaper.com. I've got a video, How to Thrive on a Plant-Based Diet. It deals with folks that are overweight, underweight. Strategies for restaurants. Before I go out to eat, I eat. I don't want to walk in there famished and polish off 2 baskets of bread before the waiter gets there. But seriously, you're there to be there with your friends. You don't owe anybody any apologies, any explanations. It's nobody's business what you order for lunch. You're a grown man, you're a grown woman. Order what you do the best you can in the Italian restaurant. Order the salad and the minestrone soup and the side dishes, and get the hell out of there before the dessert tray comes. As I said, do the best you can. And on the road, travel with healthy food. I've got a friend who travels with a plate and a knife, says, Doc, I can always go into Safeway and get a cantaloupe, cut it up. Meat becomes unappetizing after a while. It smells like burning flesh, which is what it is. What about my husband won't go for this. My kids won't go. It's not about them. It's about you. To thine own health be true, as Shakespeare should have said. It's ultimately about you and the example you set. Taste change takes a few months. Just make sure the food tastes interesting. And finally, if you need some motivation to stay on the wagon, we need to consider the most important patients of all. And that's the planet that we're living on and the kids who are going to inherit us. It's not just about us. It's not just about you and your cholesterol level. What bothers me most of all about the paleo pushers is that they say, oh, everybody ought to be eating paleo. It's the best diet. Everybody? Really? Are they seriously talking about a flesh-based meal 3 times a day for 8 billion people on this planet? Are they serious? What an arrogant, elitist approach to nutrition. The reality is that the industrial production of animal flesh is driving every single one of the environmental destructive forces we face. Deforestation, soil erosion, water depletion, water pollution, pesticide use, greenhouse gases, every single one of them. That's why they're cutting down the forest to make grazing land and cropland for beef. The soil is eroding off the croplands of Illinois and Kansas and Minnesota, off corn and soybean fields growing animal fodder. Most of the water in this state and California go to irrigate alfalfa, corn, and soybeans for beef cattle. Most of the water is polluted with pesticides and herbicides off those fields and manure from the feedlots. Most species are being driven to extinction because we're taking their land to grow animal fodder. And the majority of greenhouse gases on this planet, every year, human beings raise and slaughter 80 billion living creatures who love their lives as much as we do to satisfy our taste for animal flesh. Every single one of those cows, pigs, chickens, sheep, they are all breathing out carbon dioxide. They're belching out methane. They're eating grains that have been raised with ammonia fertilizers, putting nitrous oxide into the air. But what about all the trucks on the road? What's in the trucks? The entire agriculture industry is in those trucks. The entire restaurant industry is in those trucks. The fast food industry is in those trucks. The gasoline is being burned to produce animal flesh. Think of all the fossil fuels being burned to run irrigation pumps to grow the fodder. Think of all the fossil fuels being burned to generate electricity to keep millions of refrigerators and freezers going to keep meat cold. You don't have to refrigerate barley. It's a false dichotomy. Well, there's the fossil fuels and the transportation and the media production has its tentacles into everything that we are doing. It is driving every single environmental destruction that we face. And for the taste of animal flesh, and it's just about because we like that taste of flesh in our mouths, that's why these bears are on this melting iceberg. We are strip mining the oceans. We're clear cutting the oceans. It's time to realize we have used fishing up. We've used it up. It's time to let the oceans heal. It's time to let the fish off the hook. If you want to learn more about it, read John Robbins' book, Diet from America, read Robert Goodland's report on livestock long shadow. But the best book going, go to the website of Dr. Richard Oppenlander. And it's called Comfortably Unaware, which is right where the meat and dairy industry wants you. And read his book, see his videos. It will make it very clear. If we adopt a plant-based diet, because that's what's being asked of us. As individuals, if we want to be healthy, we need to run a plant-based diet through our body. And as a species, if we want to survive, we're being asked, evolve your diet to a plant-based diet. If we do, healing will happen. We'll need so much less land to feed 8 billion people. The forests will come back. The soils will stabilize. The rivers will run clean. The oceans will heal. The global warming will decrease as the trees from the new forest absorb the carbon dioxide. World hunger should disappear, and the wars and suffering can cease. So the invitation is to let the river of life flow through your body and let the healing happen. It's might be a bit of a hokey analogy, but the water in this river of life is the water in the fruits and vegetables. Let that wash through your cells meal after meal after meal, and healing will happen. Day after day, month after month, year after year, healing will happen, and a newer, healthy body will emerge. As the Nike commercials say, just do it. You build a brick wall, brick by brick by brick by brick. You build a leaner, healthier body, healthy meal by healthy meal by healthy meal by healthy meal. So I've been going around to the medical schools, and I've been giving this message to the students, the power of food to heal themselves and their patients and this planet. They need to know that. Someone needs to tell them this. I shouldn't have to be doing this, but there's nothing else to do at this point in my career if I want to sleep at night. I can't let those students not hear this message of the power of their patient's diet. They say, once you look behind the curtain, can't pretend you don't know what's behind the curtain. My job for these students is to rip that curtain down and push past this etiology unknown nonsense. It's the food, it's the food, it's the food. So if you want to learn more about what we're doing here, go to my website, drklaper.com, and click on Moving Medicine Forward. If you've got someone, a medical student or someone on the faculty of a medical school you'd like me to come and visit, click on the box on my website and give us their information. We'll contact them and set up a visit or an electronic visit. And if you'd like to help us out with a contribution, it's a tax-deductible donation. So a lot of information. I know I talked fast. I was on my horse galloping, but the hour is going by very quickly here. But hopefully you got the message here, and hopefully you've gotten some practical information, how to create a lean body, how to stop kidding yourself about your diet. If you're on a plant-based diet, but you're struggling with your weight, now you see it's the fat and sugar that you want to avoid. Keep your belly full of those whole plant foods, and healing magic will happen, and that will let you go out and live a long, healthy, happy life and stay out of the clutches of people like me. So with that, I wish you that long, healthy, happy life, and thank you very much for your attention.